So this session will not only help only those students who have given the exam, it will definitely help all of you to assess how is the pattern of the question and how do we get. If you ask me, definitely it's a easy paper, but yet if you observe the past 5 years question papers also, most of the time we have the same pattern. They are not very difficult, not that very easy. What's the good score? So definitely, it was a smooth paper, and I think maybe because of this COVID-19, they couldn't prepare, they couldn't make that the difficult paper. So I think they gave a simple paper. So if you would have given it decently with 80% of them correct, I think it would have been great. It will be definitely great. Don't worry at all. You would have given great, but continue the studying, continue your preparation. Don't stop at all. So now you should start with more zeal and more vigor because your NEET, you don't want to give up on NEET. So maybe NEET also might be easy this time because the pandemic is going to run for another 2-3 months also. So maybe it might again have the same. So you have to score in this time. So please give your maximum efforts. So this aim should be like a push to you that you have to prepare more and more better for your need, right? So I hope you all have given great. So there is some unsatisfactory feeling because it was an easy paper, so that is scaring you all. But don't worry, you would have all done great, right? So yes, I will discuss the. I am Dr. Ramyashri. I'll discuss obstetrics and gynecology questions, whatever we got in the paper. To be frank, the 1 month before this session, silly mistakes definitely gonna cost this time. Silly mistakes are definitely gonna cost. So yes, right. So I would like to also tell you one more thing that last month we had free sessions, free classes where I was daily taking classes for your daily. I was discussing some questions. So most of the questions are picked up from here and there, whatever we have discussed. So we are going to quickly revise this paper again and take your doubts, answer, and go in depth and finish the session. Right. So let's start the session. Good evening, Subara. Good evening, Arjun. So how many of you are expecting the good rank? Namaste, Satish. Thank you, Vamshidhar. Thanks a lot. That's so. I need a thumbs up who is thinking that they might be rank one, or a hands up. Right? Definitely, definitely. So your thought. This is a class for NEET PG. This is a class for NEET PG. So I just want you to have that positive thinking. So definitely a thumbs up telling that you might be rank one is something which will make you push towards the rank one. So definitely be positive. So there might be the rank one in this class, right? Okay, let's start the session. Let's start with the first question. I think this session, not only my notes, I think my sixth sense also worked. So the day just that night, I was just thinking ki what questions might come. So somehow I felt endometrial biopsy question will definitely pop up. So I just kept that day that message that please check off the endometrial biopsy question. So let's put a poll for this question and hope you answer. You all answer in the poll. So 50-year-old female with abnormal uterine bleeding following what is the next best step? OCPs, Pepele biopsy, hysterectomy, progesterones. Wonderful. So we can see 70% of the students have answered this correct. 70% of students have answered this correct. That definitely tells all of you have done great, right? So this, in this question, she is a 50-year-old. And what did I tell you always about the 50-year-old? So whenever you have a patient with premenopausal or perimenopausal, whenever they have abnormal uterine bleeding or heavy menstrual bleeding, excellent. You always have to rule out endometrial cancer or endometrial hypoplasias. And what is the best way to rule out the endometrial cancer and endometrial hypoplasias? It is by Pepele biopsy. It is by Pepele biopsy. This almost has 92% of sensitivity, which will help us to diagnose or rule out the endometrial biopsies. To be frank, this is not a new question, and last year NEET 2019 also you had something similar question. So definitely it's a repeat question, many times repeat question, right? Now I will not use OCPs here because there might be endometrial hypoplasia. So I want first, if it is a typical hypoplasia, I have to go for hysterectomy. So I will not use only OCPs. Hysterectomy would have been done if I know the definitive diagnosis. If it is without a TPR, it can simply work with progesterones. So that is why these are not the answer. So as they ask next best step, it will be Pepele biopsy. Right. Let's go to the next question now. A hypertensive pregnant female presented with abdominal pain, vaginal bleeding, and loss of fetal movements. What is the diagnosis? So I want you people to answer in the poll because I know definitely this is also a simple question. Wonderful. I again have 70% of the students answering this correct. So, hi Sapu. Okay, to be frank, I think, hi Dinesh, hello Jitendra, Arpit, I think even if they would have mentioned as the period of gestation, answer doesn't change in a big way. Answer will not change in a big way. So we have in the scoreboard Genda Pool, first place, Megha, second place, Ankita, third place, right? So here, the clues which are given for your answer of abruption, I think all of you know that answer is abruption. So what are the clues which are telling that it is an abruption? Point number one, hypertensive pregnant woman. That is the first clue which they have given, right? Second one, it's having abdominal pain, vaginal bleeding. So if the period of gestation would have been given, definitely it will tell us it is an antepartum hemorrhage. So can you tell me what was the gestational age of the patient which was given? Now the answer which is ruled out here is it's a bleeding. So preterm labor can be considered based on the abdominal pain, but there is a vaginal bleeding, so I go more in favor of abruption of placenta previa. So I think 10 weeks would have been very less actually. I don't think so. It is a 10 weeks. Loss of fetal movements cannot be 10 weeks. Definitely, right. So placenta previa cannot be this because it is having abdominal pain. There is abdominal pain because placenta previa is painless bleeding. This triad of abdominal pain, bleeding, and loss of fetal movements and hypertensive patients, all these are a clear-cut diagnosis of abruption. So it is a straight-cut diagnosis of abruption, right? So the answer here is abruption. Let's go to the next question. Which of the following is not the contraceptive function of OC pills? I'm going to put the poll. Very good. Niharika, you can answer in the poll. You can answer in the poll. There are plenty of students who have joined in. So we have 70% of the students answering this correct, with Megha in the lead. So Gainaful, did you commit a silly mistake for this question? So we have Megha in the first place, Ankita in the second place, Ram Charan in the third place as of now. So which of the following is not the contraceptive function of OC pills was asked. Now in OC pills, that is estrogen plus progesterone, what is the main function, main mechanism of action? So they're mainly causing anovulation. And how are they causing anovulation? By causing the negative feedback, by causing negative feedback on FSH and LH. So what is happening to FSH and LH here? FSH and LH are decreasing, right? They're decreasing the HPO axis. So there is a negative feedback on FSH and LH. So there is not increased gonadotrophins. Indeed, they are decreasing the gonadotrophins, right? Now the next thing, how are they preventing the implantation? How are they preventing the implantation? So they're preventing the implantation by causing the, this is AIMS paper. Yes, very good. They are making out of phase of the endometrium. Basically, they make the endometrium thin. So obviously, when endometrium is thin, there cannot be implantation. And what should be the thickness of the endometrium for us to have the implantation? So the thickness of the endometrium should be for implantation is around 8 to 10 mm. Answer is A. 100% answer is A. No doubt at all. So don't at all get confused. The answer is 100% A. Okay. Now next, we know that progesterone is going to cause the cervical mucus thickening. So this is also one of the function of it. Definitely it prevents ovulation, and this is the primary mechanism for the, it is the primary mechanism for your OC pills. So the primary mechanism of OC pills is the preventing the ovulation. So here itself, I would like to finish off with the, what is the primary mechanism for, actually NEET 2018, they asked the question that what is the primary mechanism of action of progesterone only pills? What is the primary mechanism of action of progesterone only pills? Excellent, Pratik Bansal. So the primary mechanism of action is for progesterone only pills is cervical mucus thickening. See, what happens is, I think there are some students having a query that it prevents implantation is correct or not. So whenever you give OC pills, OC pills lead to endometrial thinning. So when somebody is telling out of phase, it means that your secretory phase, you should ideally have 14 mm thickness, or your secretory phase changes should have been on day 20, from day 14 only. But here they are lagging. There is very slow changes of secretory. You indeed don't have secretory changes at all because there is no progesterone here. As there is no progesterone, you don't have secretory changes. So when there is no secretory changes, how does implantation occur? Implantation doesn't occur. So it is helping in no implantation also. Okay. So endometrial thinning leads to no implantation because there is no thickening of the endometrium. And please remember, for implantation to occur, you should have minimum thickness of 10 mm. But this is not a primary mechanism of action, but this is also one type of action which OCPs have. But this is absolutely wrong. Increasing gonadotrophins is absolutely wrong because when you give estrogen and progesterone, it causes negative feedback on FSH and LH. So your gonadotrophins are going to decrease when you give OC pills. Right? That is how it is causing the anovulation also. Okay, progesterone only pills, cervical mucus thickening. How does your IUCDs act? How does your IUCDs act? What is the primary mechanism of action of IUCDs? Right, they create a foreign body like scenario. Right, so they prevent implantation. How does your LNG IUCD act? Primary mechanism for LNG IUCD is also preventing the implantation only. Okay. Now, do you know any progesterone which can a progesterone prevent ovulation? Just give me 1 second. हाँ, लेकिन इसको
option increased bilirubin option except increased bilirubin
serum bilirubin मेरे ज़्यादा
indirect bilirubin fecal bilirubin is an option which is transfers.
Right. So there is also a progesterone. Can progesterone only pills? Can progesterone only pills? Can progesterone only pills cause anovulation? Your third generation POPs can lead to anovulation. Good to see there are so many students speaking Telugu. Good. Right. So next question. 32-year-old female goes to infertility clinic. Woman has 28-day regular cycle. How do you investigate for ovulation? I think this I have repeated so many times. This is nothing but they have asked you what is the indicators of ovulation. So it is the indicator of ovulation. Right. I think many students went wrong in this question because I have 50% students going for A, 50% students going for C. So I'm just waiting for the poll to get over. Srigiri, you can actually answer in the, Niharika, you can answer in the poll, you get into the ranking list. But anyway, you answered correct. So yes, we have still in the lead Megha, Ankita and Ramcharan and actually many more students who have answered all correct. So timing doesn't matter, but many more students also have 4 out of 4. So this question, 32-year-old female goes to infertility clinic. Woman has 28 days regular cycle. How do you investigate for ovulation? Answer is progesterone at 21st day. Answer is progesterone at 21st day. Now you might ask me, why not LH at 14th day? Now, can anybody from in the students can any student comment why not LH at 14th day is the answer? So I want you people to try it first. Then I'll tell you why not LH at 14th day. Very good, excellent, Meghna. So even your PCOS, your PCOS, you have LH increased. PCOS also LH will be increased. But what about progesterone? Progesterone is released only when you have ovulatory cycles. Progesterone is released only when you have ovulatory cycle. Right? So that is the reason what will be most appropriate answer here? Progesterone on 21st day. Now I would like to ask you what should be the progesterone level in order to tell that she is having ovulatory cycles. So day 21, what should be the serum progesterone level in order to tell that she is having ovulatory cycles? Right, more than 3.5 nanogram to 5 nanogram per ml. More than 3.5 to 5 nanogram per ml. If it is present, then you call it as ovulatory cycles. If serum progesterone is less than 3 nanogram per ml, then it is anovulatory. And if serum progesterone is more than 25 nanogram per ml, then what is your diagnosis? Excellent, Megha. Then it becomes the pregnancy, intrauterine pregnancy. It almost rules out your ectopic pregnancy also. So if it is more than 25, it is an intrauterine pregnancy. So the answer here is progesterone at 21st day. Progesterone at 21st day. Yes, very good, Mohammed. Correct. Let's go to the next question. A lady presented with 6 weeks of amenorrhea with positive UPT, mild bleeding per vaginum, no USG, on USG, no gestational sac in the uterus. Tubes and ovaries are normal. What should be the next step? Now, I would like to tell you one more thing. Don't get disappointed on any wrong questions. If you have committed any question wrong, no need to get disappointed. Only thing what you can do is the next exam, or maybe you have done very well in the other subject. So it doesn't matter at all. So you have to just correct yourself at this point of time and tell yourself that I'm not going to commit this mistake again. And understand where did you go wrong. Is it a concept mistake, or is it a what you have studied is a mistake? So please try to understand. So just try to rectify, but don't take into your brains. So yes, again, this question we have 60% of students going here and there. 60% students only answering this correct. So we have again same Megha in first place, Ram in second place, Priyanka in the third place. I definitely understand if there is a mistake in any question. So it really makes us disappointed, but don't worry at all. Okay, so there is moderate bleeding. Let me consider this as moderate bleeding also. Now, I would like to ask you one question. So, let's have a healthy discussion, okay? So, I would like to ask you one question. So, a lady presented with 6 weeks of amenorrhea with positive UPT, but on USG, no gestational sac in uterus, tubes, and ovaries normal. What will be your diagnosis at this point? What do you call this as? It is called as, excellent Ramcharan, this is called as pregnancy of unknown location. There is something called as PUL. This is called as pregnancy of unknown location. Whenever, please remember this, I think this is one thing which we have discussed previously also. If you don't see a sac on TVS, then we call that as pregnancy of unknown location. I'm not knowing whether it is an abortion, whether it is an ectopic pregnancy, or whether it is an intrauterine pregnancy. The next step I will do is I will go for beta HCG. And what should be the minimum beta HCG level? What should be the minimum beta HCG level in order to visualize the gestational sac in the uterus? It should be 1500. If it is less than 1500, you have to go for serial beta HCG monitoring every 48 hours. Vikram, I think you have to just refresh or just log in, come out and come in again, then you will be able to see the questions. Right, Vikram? Okay. So please understand, in this question, it was pregnancy of unknown location. Yeah, if there is no fluid, it is still good. No, I'm not telling this is a ectopic pregnancy. Understand here, I'm not telling this is ectopic pregnancy. I am telling this is pregnancy of unknown location. I'm telling that this is a pregnancy of unknown location. So as this is a pregnancy of unknown location, I will do beta HCG. I will do beta HCG. I have no clarity whether it is a missed abortion. I have no clarity whether it's a complete abortion. I have no clarity whether it's an ectopic pregnancy. In order to get that clarity, what am I going to do? I am going to follow up with a beta HCG. If beta HCG is less than 1500, then I'm going to follow up every 48 hours. On every 48 hours, if there is a rise in beta HCG by more than 63%, then it's an intrauterine pregnancy. Now, more likely, this would have not been an intrauterine pregnancy because she had bleeding. If there is a rise, but it is less than 63%, then it can be an ectopic pregnancy. But if there is a fall in beta HCG, then it is an abortion. So here the diagnosis is called as pregnancy of unknown location. Now I want you to give me a thumbs up if you understood what is this question, and okay, good, great. I think all of you understood what is the question now. Okay, let's go to the next question. A lady came with intractable vomiting, sorry. USG shows snowstorm appearance at 6 weeks. Next step in the management is Braj, any doubt? So I think I have 70% of the students answering this correct. I have 70%. Yeah, this is a simple question because this is a simple question. So no problem, Shavik. We are still left with another few questions to discuss. So yes, we have in the first place Megha, Bhavyashri in the second place, Gayatri in the third place. I think Megha is not leaving the first place, but you have second and third shifting. So the main clue which has been given here is snowstorm appearance. Snowstorm appearance is nothing but it is seen in molar pregnancy, right? And that too, which molar pregnancy? Partial mole or complete mole? Complete mole, right? This intractable vomiting. Intractable vomiting is what? What is that diagnosis? When you have complete molar pregnancy with intractable vomiting, what is this? Hyperemesis, which is a complication of your complete molar pregnancy because of the raised beta HCG. Very good, Shavik. So what will be the answer here? I think molar pregnancy, you can close your answer, close your eyes and tell it is suction and evacuation. Suction and evacuation. Okay. So that is why the answer here is suction and evacuation. Now let me tell you, actually I've been not telling, but Megha is a potential candidate. I am not surprised if Megha is ranked 1 also. To be frank, I have heavy expectations from Megha and I know Megha since her third year. So I definitely have heavy expectations from her. She can be the rank 1 in the AIMS. Right, Megha? Okay, so which is not a biophysical profile. I think this, our mnemonic of ban mote helped us a lot. But I'm surprised to see that 51% students only answered this correct and many students didn't answer this correct. I This question I think I taught you the mnemonic of Van Mote. I have only 50% students answering this correct, which is actually disappointing because this is not a question where you should, yeah, modified BPP is AFI. Guys, so Megha didn't give exam. So we definitely have the next topper, right? So BPP is B, B for breathing, fetal breathing. A is amniotic fluid index. N is NST. So it is not CPG, it is the NST. MO, movements. T, Van Motu. T is tone. This is the mnemonic which I taught you for the biophysical profile, that is Van Motu. So B is fetal breathing, A is amniotic fluid index, N is non-stress test, M is movement, T is tone. So if you see here, which is not a part of biophysical profile, fetal respiratory movement. Now breathing, fetal breathing and fetal respiratory movement. Is there any difference between these two? No, I think both are same, right? Right? So A is definitely there. Now coming to the movements. Yeah, actually, better word is respiratory movements. For the mnemonic, I think we are using this breathing, but better is definitely respiratory movements. So fetal movements, definitely that is also included. NST is also included. So what is not included? That is the contraction stress test. What is not included is the contraction stress test. So that's why the answer is C, contraction stress test. Now I would like to ask you one more point here. So Arjit was telling us what is modified BPP. So can you tell me what is modified BPP? Excellent. Non-stress test plus AFI, non-stress test plus AFI together is called as modified biophysical profile. Very good, excellent. Management of PCOS includes all except what do we use routinely? Smart question asked by Arjun. Arjun, usually, this. How much time will you take for doing biophysical profile? We almost take 30 minutes plus NST is 20 minutes. So this is completely 1 hour. And 1 hour in each patient is very difficult for us. So what we routinely do is modified BPP. What we routinely do is modified BPP. Okay? Yes. Management of PCOS are all except. So this was like a question which they are like not interested to frame a question and they are framed. I felt that way. Amit, how did you do the exam? So I have answered it in within 15 seconds. Yeah, don't mind because we'll discuss the next questions. No, Arpit, don't worry. You would have answered correct only. You would have answered correct. So here, if you observe, clomiphene citrate, ovarian drilling, letrozole, all these are used for what? Ovulation induction. So all these are used for ovulation induction. Thank you, Amit. So I could help you in making OBGs a stronger subject. So management of PCOS are all except definitely all these are used for ovulation induction except ulipristal acetate because ulipristal acetate is selective progesterone receptor modulator SPRM, right? And where do we use this? Very good, Avijit. Selective progesterone receptor modulator. Thank you, but I didn't set the paper, but thanks. Yes, we use this in emergency contraception. No, no, no. Okay, now, oh my God, please be safe, Amit, be safe. Matlab maintain social distancing and everything. Put the mask. I really appreciate your dedication, right? Okay. So this is emerge. I really appreciate all your dedication because many of you have traveled far and that too when the pandemic of COVID is in peak, you all took the risk of traveling. So don't worry, all your hard work will be definitely paid off. So all your hard work will be definitely paid off with a very great prize to you. So yes, now coming back to the topic. So it is a selective progesterone receptor modulator, which is in an emergency contraception. Now, apart from emergency contraception, can we use ulipristal acetate in any other man? Is it used in any other place also? It can be used for fibroid also. Fibroid. It can be used for fibroid also. Very good, Yusuf and Meenakshi. So emergency contraception, the dose is 30 milligrams. And nowadays we are using ulipristal in India also. And the trade name is ELA1 or ELA. Fibroid, the dose is 5 milligrams. And this can be used only for maximum 3 months because ulipristal acetate has side effect of liver failure. Very good, Shravik, correct. It has the side effect of liver failure. Right. Next, one more question. If they would have asked management of PCOS, which is the first line management of PCOS, then what would have been your answer? If the question would have been changed in this way. Very good. Excellent, Snehashish and Sai Swaroop. It will be letrozole. It will be letrozole. If they would have asked what is the first line of management of PCOS, then the answer is letrozole. Then the answer is letrozole. Okay? Yes. It is mainly aromatase inhibitor. No, PCOD, The first line of drug, whatever might be the age, is letrozole. If you're going for IVF, then it is gonadotropins. If you're speaking in terms of age, if you're planning for IVF, then you have to go for gonadotropins. Otherwise, for PCOS, go for letrozole as the first line. Okay, this question also, I think we've discussed all the three things. So, iron and folic acid supplementation dose for reproductive women in Anemia Mukt Bharat is very good. Arjit, Sultana, Mohammad Yunus. So I cannot tell what is the best management for PCOD because we always go stepwise management for PCOD. PCODs usually respond very easily. So I first try with letrozole. If it doesn't work, then I go for IVF. But most of the time they go with letrozole only. They respond better with letrozole. So I still think best management for PCOD would be letrozole. Okay, Rajeshwar? Yes, so I have only 53% students answering this correct. So we have Megha in the first place, Bhavya in the second place, and Arpit in the third place. So the dose of the Anemia Mukt Bharat patients is 500 micrograms of folic acid plus 60 milligrams of iron daily. And how do you give? This is for the reproductive women. And I can also tell you for pregnancy actually. For pregnancy, it is same dose, but in pregnancy, you give minimum 180 days in antepartum in pregnancy and 180 days postpartum. So you give it minimum 180 days in pregnancy and 180 days postpartum. Yes, I am discussing yesterday's question paper. Was it given adolescents or was it given? Or was it given reproductive age? If it is adolescent, then the answer definitely will change. If it is for adolescent, then answer will change. If it is adolescent, then your answer will be I've never checked actually for adolescents, but adolescents definitely your answer will change. So I update you with the adolescent management. But yes, it is somewhere 45, somewhere 45. Okay, so we have the answers coming up. It is 45 milligrams of iron plus 400 micrograms once a week. Right. So this question, if it is adolescent, the answer will change. If it is for pregnant women, the answer will change. Right. So if 400 was not there, you can definitely choose 500 milligrams. If 400 was not there, definitely you can choose 500 milligrams. Right? Okay, next question. A young female with postcoital bleeding examination showed no lesion. Pap smear showed carcinoma in situ Hetzel. What is the next step? Yes, I think this is based on a very simple concept that if whatever might be the diagnosis on your pap smear, you always have to go for colposcopy. You always have to go for colposcopy. So please remember, whatever might be your diagnosis on pap smear, you have to always go for colposcopy for confirmation. True. I think we had a free class on cervical cancer or CIN where we had similar question in our discussion. So the answer here is colposcopy. Right. Now, if I change this question in a slight way, I change this question in a slight way asking pap smear showed the endocervical carcinoma, adenocarcinoma of the cervix. Excellent. If it would have been adenocarcinoma or endocervical carcinoma, then your answer will be cone biopsy. Then your answer will be cone biopsy. Very good. Excellent. Okay, Bishop score includes all except dilatation of cervix, length of cervix, position of the cervix, type of maternal pelvis. So, they were very considerate, not asking you the scoring system. See, most of the time I always see that there is nothing like they don't ask you big, very difficult questions. They are simple questions. So, don't worry, Arpit, you would have scored in some other question. Don't worry at all. So, here the answer is 75% students have answered this correct. So, maybe you have to keep more, you have to use more mnemonics to remember things if you have answered this wrong. So first we have Mega 11 out of 11, but you have the next rank stepping down where they have done one question wrong. So we have the second rank with 10 out of 11. So the Bishop score, what all does Bishop score includes? So Bishop score includes dilatation, position of the cervix, this is old Bishop score. This is old Bishop score, effacement, station, and cervical consistency. So I think we can make a mnemonic for this. Speed, I think we can make it as speed, SCPED. So this C is coming out of place, but yeah. So the mnemonic for this will be speed. Is that fair enough? And will it help you to remember? So S is station. S is station. So station में you have -3, -2. Scoring is 0, 1, 2, and 3. So 0 is, this is the old Bishop score. This is the old Bishop score. Station -3, it is high up, so it will be 0. Everything which is high up and not favorable will be 0. Okay, I think we also have Nitesh giving us a better mnemonic. So I think we can write it as CDCP. See, there is a DCP. I think this is more good. See, there is a DCP. Remember somehow, yeah, but remember. Okay, right. So dilatation may closed will give you 0. Position of the cervix, if it is posterior, it will come 0. Effacement, it is 0 to 30%. Then again, it will give you 0. Station -3, it will give you 0. And consistency firm, it will give you 0. Right? So that is first thing. Now coming to the 1, 2, 3. How do I remember this 1, 2, 3 is? Actually, this is an old scoring system. This is an old scoring test system. What is the thing which is changed in the modified scoring system? What is changed in the modified scoring system? Excellent. Effacement has been replaced by length of the cervix. Effacement has been replaced by length of the cervix. So when you replace it for length of the cervix, what is the length of the cervix in non-pregnant patient? In pregnant patient, what is the length of the cervix? Excellent, 4 centimeters. So I am going to write here 4 centimeters. I'm going to write here 4 centimeters. So 4 centimeters will give you 0. And 3 to 4, around 3 to 4 will give you 1 score. 1 to 2 will give you 2 score. And if it is completely effaced, obviously, if 2 and 1, I think it will give you score 3. So here I have that also. So I remember these two are ulta. These two are ulta. That's how I remember. Dilatation and length are ulta. Dilatation and length are ulta. So if you see length more than 4 is given score of 0 and cervical dilatation of 5 is given score 3. 3 to 4, 1 to 2. These are ulta. That's how I remember. Basically, to be frank, if you can't remember this entire scoring system, I'll at least advise you to have a gross idea for you all. And whenever you do PV, you always check the consistency of the cervix, whether it's firm, whether it is medium, or whether it is soft. If it is soft, you get a score of 2. Similarly, you check for the position of the uterus, position of the cervix. If it is posterior, you get a score of 0. If it is in midline, you get a score of 1. If it is anterior, you get a score of 2. Excellent. As in when your cervix dilates, your length of the cervix or the effacement of the cervix will decrease. So that is why both of these are ulta. Both of these are ulta, right? And station, as the head is coming down, you're getting your score also will increase. So grossly, if it is a favorable, your score will be more. Now I want you to remember what is the score which tells that it is a favorable cervix. Score more than how much will be favorable cervix. So score of 8, excellent. Score of 8 or greater is considered to be favorable cervix. Score of 8 or greater is considered to be favorable cervix. Yeah, Subbarao also is giving us an idea that it is a B, so you can remember it as 8. And score of 6 or less, you have to consider it as unfavorable and it requires induction of labor. Now, many books give different, but this is one thing which I have picked up from ACOG. Okay, right. This question, sir was telling me just now. Sir came and told me just now that there is some answer change. Something changed in this option. These options are not very appropriate. I actually don't have the wrong answer only here. Is there increased urine bilirubin? So there was one option where there is increased urine bilirubin. So RH incompatibility, basically they are telling that they're asking you about hemolytic anemias. This question and answer, basically they're trying to ask you only hemolytic anemias. In hemolytic anemias, will there be increase in the serum bilirubin? Serum bilirubin will increase. So I'll just put a poll for this and then I will speak about it. I have 52% students answering this correct. Mega still leading, and we have SD in second place and Arpit in the third place. But I think the first 5 students are having 11 out of 10, that's good. So RH incompatibility not seen is increased serum bilirubin. You have increased serum bilirubin. You have increased fecal urobilinogen as well as increased urine urobilinogen. Both of them are increased. So what is not increased is increased urine bilirubin. Urine bilirubin is not increased. So that is why the answer here is D. So basically this question was mainly about hemolytic anemia. This question was mainly about the hemolytic anemia. Although the name was given RH incompatibility, but you know, even I felt there will be one question on RH incompatibility. So Gubba sir has told you B, but he told me just now when he came and told me that answer is D. Okay. So coming to the next question, mediolateral episiotomy structures cut all R except. Right. So this very recently I have put a flashcard in my group flashcard. So in that I have discussed this. So episiotomy last year also AIMS may they have put the episiotomy scissors. Very good. I have 78% students answering this question correct. Shiva, you have to just refresh your laptop, matlab phone. You will be able to see the questions. So I have 76% students answering this correct. What are the muscles which are cut in the mediolateral episiotomy? Now I would like to tell you all the points which are important of the episiotomy. I'll put forward all the important points about the episiotomy here. So episiotomy is a second degree perineal tear. You always prefer mediolateral episiotomy, although you have four types of episiotomies, that is median, mediolateral, J-shaped, and lateral. So this is the median or midline. This is the mediolateral, and this is the J-shaped, and you also have a lateral. But what is preferable is mediolateral. So we mostly give it can be RMLE or LMLE depending on whether we are right-handed or left-handed. Now, what are the muscles cut in the episiotomy? So the muscles which are cut are the bulbospongiosis, superficial transverse perineum, and deep transverse perineum. And what are the, so that is why the answer here, obturator muscle, is wrong. Yes, you also have some amount of perineal branches of pudendal vessels and nerves also being cut. That's why we have bleeding during episiotomy. So you repair it in 3 layers. And what do we use for repairing this? We use the vicryl or chromic catgut. We use vicryl or chromic catgut. And this is one thing which I got query from many students. Incision angle is 60 degrees from the midline if it is a stretched perineum. So when you are giving the when do you give episiotomy? When do you give episiotomy? Excellent. You give episiotomy at the time of crowning. So crowning means at the time of crowning. So crowning means your perineum is completely stretched. So when the perineum is stretched, it is 60 degrees from the midline. Now after the baby has come out and the perineum has become normal, so what will happen? It will look like as if it is post-delivery angle will look like 45 degrees from the midline. So please remember, this is one query I got from many students. If it is stretched perineum, then what will be the angle? 60 degrees. If it is post delivery, then it is 45 degrees. So you should be careful. Now, if you now you might ask me that if they didn't give you whether it is stretched perineum or unstretched perineum, and they just asked you what is the angle of episiotomy, then I will tell you prefer 60 degrees, because 60 degrees is the one when you're doing, 60 degrees is the time when you're actually giving, not post delivery, no. So that is why go with 60 degrees. So this is quoted from Williams. You don't require to worry at all. So we can quote that exam, quote, matlab we can show it. Right. This is one question which, I definitely have, like, I had to think a lot, and maybe I would have personally gone wrong for this question. नहीं पता था मुझे क्वेश्चन पेपर 45-year-old multi-paris came with, hopefully ऐसे like this question paper should come for NEET also, no? All which I discussed in the past 1 week should be kept in the question paper. Yeah, I will work more hard. So I work more hard to make such things to duplicate what might come. Right. I think Mega also lost 1 mark. So we have Mega in the first place, and I just lost who were in the second and third place. So this question, actually, if I go according to Datta, the answer would have been C, hysterectomy. But and what we practice also, answer will be C, hysterectomy. If I don't go according to guidelines, and if I really see such patient, my answer will be C. Okay. But what I practice is not asked here. What you ideally should do is asked here. As she is asymptomatic. So even when I teach you also, I actually write, I always tell you, size is a controversy. According to your basic guidelines from ACOG or RCOG or any standard books, whatever size it might be, if they're asymptomatic, you don't require to do anything. So don't do anything as she is asymptomatic. Now, one more reason why I should not do anything is she is 45 years. So she is approaching menopause. And once she approaches menopause, what will happen to this fibroid? It will shrink. So that is more so ever one more reason why I should not do hysterectomy. That is another reason why I should not do hysterectomy. Right? So that is why answer would be A. That's why answer would be A. In which age group should screening of cancer cervix be done? Yes, Vamshi. I'm happy that whatever we discussed helped you, most of you, and you're all happy. That's a good thing. Yeah, this is like a, again, this is like a straight cut question, and which would have done so many times. Definitely, Tejaswini, I will do special classes for FMG also. Don't worry, there is still August time, no? So we'll do it. So the answer here is 21 to 65. The answer here is 21 to 65. So we do the screening from 21 to 65 years. So quickly we'll revise, quickly we'll tell off the screening. I would have repeated so many times, but we'll quickly tell it off. So start screening. Harshada, you can message me on the Unacademy app itself or on the Telegram group, or you can message me on the Facebook Messenger. I reply everywhere. So you start the screening from 21 years. From 21 to 29, you screen LBC or pap smear every 3 years. 30 to 65 years, you screen it. You screen same. If you are using LBC or pap smear, screen every 3 years. Or if you are using LBC or pap smear plus HPV DNA testing, then it is every 5 years. And when do you stop screening? LBC, liquid based cytology, not K, LBC, liquid based cytology. I have little bad handwriting. When do you stop screening? Stop screening by 35 if you have 3 consecutive negative smears, right? Criteria for abdominal pregnancy. This was a repeat question in 2017. AIMS 2017, you had a repeat question. And I always tell students, even if you can't remember what is the criteria, at least remember the name of the criteria, right? So, what is the answer here? Criteria for abdominal pregnancy? This requires a mnemonic again. Actually, it got me confused, you know. So many have answered wrong, so I actually got confused. I really loved the Nitesh mnemonic, and if you don't mind, Nitesh, I will use this everywhere when I'm teaching. So I will quote your name also. I really like his mnemonic. Stud. So abs, he made abs or she made abs. So study for abdominal pregnancy. Study for abdominal pregnancy. I think that is the best way to remember. Thanks. I think all of us should thank Nitesh. So give a thumbs up for Nitesh. So study for abdominal pregnancy. Start. So abs. Study for abdominal pregnancy. Spielberg's is ovarian. And Rubin's is cervical. Rubin's or Pamans are both for cervical. And ring of fire appearance will be for 5 minutes, for 2 minutes. Ring of fire appearance is for ectopic pregnancy. So abdominal pregnancy, it is criteria is Studiford's criteria. Yes, unruptured ectopic, very good. It is a Studiford's criteria, abdominal pregnancy. They mainly have lower abdominal pain and bleeding. Braxton Hicks contractions are absent. Management is surgery. Management is surgery for that. You don't give methotrexate, you have to go for surgery here. Ovarian pregnancy, it is Spiegelberg's criteria, whereas cervical pregnancy, it is Rubin's criteria or Paman's criteria, right? And I always prefer more than dumping your brain with many things. Be precise. Remember those precise things. You less likely go wrong. Okay. ESR increases in pregnancy because of increase in this. Also, I've done in a class many times. So this would be the last question where we'll see the final scoreboard with the ranking. So all of you attempt this last question. Right, I have 70% students answering this correct. So ESR, erythrocyte sedimentation rate, is the rate at which the erythrocyte sediment. And what is responsible for this sedimentation? What is responsible for this sedimentation? Fibrinogen. And where do we have fibrinogen? Fibrinogen is increased. So in pregnancy, all coagulation factors increase except 11 and 13. And fibrinogen is factor 1. Fibrinogen is factor 1. Right? So on the whole in the scoreboard, we have Megha in the first place, but Megha couldn't attend AIMS. So don't worry of the competition from Megha for this AIMS. Sorry, Megha. So second place, we have Jia, and third place, Ankita. And 14 marks, we have 14 out of 17. Many other students actually, we have many other students in the 14 plus 14 out of 17, and at 10th we start with 13 out of 17. So that is for today. So thank you guys. I'll keep doing more and more sessions where we can all benefit, and this is not the stop of our learning. We are gonna prepare more effectively for NEET, and definitely for FMG also, and definitely we are going to try to score again 30 out of 30 or 25 out of, no, let's score 30 out of 30 only, right? Sure, Vishal, sure. Next JIPMER. So we'll do JIPMER session. So I'll do previous year JIPMER sessions. Okay. So thank you guys. Thank you. FMG also I'll do. Thank you. See you all again soon.